All right, let's talk about one of the biggest headaches in New Zealand cities, parking. I know, but trust me, this is about way more than just finding a spot for your car. What we're really talking about is a massive choice, a choice that could unlock a ton more housing, give local businesses a real boost, and honestly, just make our cities better places to live. So really, it all boils down to two very different futures. You can see it right here. On one side, you've got the city we're all used to, the one built around the car, where parking feels like this mandated right, And it just leads to these huge, empty seas of asphalt. But on the other side, there's a different way, a people-first city, kind of like what they've done in Tokyo, where parking is your own private responsibility. And look at the difference. It frees up all this space for people, for communities, for life.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the real cost of all this parking. Then, we'll dive into the Tokyo model and see how it works. After that, we'll get into the good stuff, how it can make housing more affordable and actually help local businesses. And finally, we'll see what a blueprint for New Zealand might look like.
All right, first up, let's get to the heart of the problem. You see, our car-choked cities, they didn't happen by accident. It's the result of what this report calls gray inertia. I love that term. It's this idea that we're just kind of stuck in old ways of thinking, where our planning rules have literally prioritized storing cars over building homes for people. And that has some huge, huge hidden costs.
And if you want to see just how big this problem is, look no further than Manukau in Auckland. Get this, somewhere between a third and almost half of all the land in the central city is just surface car parking. Think about that. That's not just wasted space, it literally carves the city up into these isolated urban islands, making it a total pain to get anywhere on foot.
And yeah, this is what that looks like in real life, these endless seas of parking. From a housing point of view, they're a complete dead zone, zero homes. But it's even worse than that because they create this vicious cycle, right? The more land we dedicate to cars, the more we have to drive, which then creates demand for, you guessed it, more parking. It's a trap, and we've built it ourselves.
So what's driving all this? Well, a lot of it comes down to this sneaky little rule buried in our planning codes called parking minimums. Basically, it forces anyone building anything new to include a certain number of parking spots. It doesn't matter if you're a building right next to a train station, you still have to build the parking. It's basically a hidden car tax, and it's not optional.
So, how do we get out of this mess? Well, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's a solution that's been tried and tested for 50 years. Yeah, 50. We're talking about the system Japan put in place way back in the 70s to deal with this exact same problem.
And the core of their model is, well, it's actually incredibly simple, but it changes everything. It's called proof of parking, and it means exactly what it sounds like. Before you can register a car in Tokyo, you have to prove officially that you have a private off-street spot to keep it. Just like that, the responsibility for storing a car shifts from the public streets to the car's owner. It's a total game changer.
So what does that actually look like for someone buying a car? It's pretty straightforward. Step 1, you find a car you want. Step 2, and this is the crucial part, you have to go out and secure a private parking space first, either by buying one or renting one. Step 3, you take that proof of parking to the local police. They give you an official certificate. And only then, with that piece of paper in hand, can you go and register your car. The cost of parking your private property becomes your private responsibility. Makes sense, right?
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. One of the biggest knock-on effects of this whole model is how it directly attacks the housing affordability crisis. Remember that hidden car tax we talked about? Well, by making parking a private choice, you get rid of it, and the impact on housing costs is pretty dramatic.
Let's just talk numbers for a second. To build a single parking space in a new building, we're talking anywhere from $20,000 to $65,000 for one spot, and that cost doesn't just vanish into thin air. Nope, it gets rolled right into the price of a new home or apartment. So you're paying for it whether you own a car or not.
So now think about the opportunity cost. Take 1 acre of land that's currently just a surface parking lot. You know, that asphalt desert? It's providing 0 homes. But what if we freed that land up? Well, according to the research, you could build around 40 homes on that exact same spot, probably with some shops downstairs too. You're literally turning a dead zone into a living, breathing neighborhood. So what's the bottom line here? It's pretty simple. When you stop forcing developers to build all this expensive, often unnecessary parking, they can slash their construction costs by as much as 20%, and that means cheaper homes for everyone. Plus, it frees them up to design buildings for people, not just for cars.
Okay, so it's not just about housing. This approach also gives a huge shot in the arm to local businesses. And it all boils down to this really cool idea called the linger factor. The basic idea is that when you design streets for people to enjoy, instead of just for cars to move through, people, well, they stick around. They linger.
And you can see the economic power of this in the numbers. Take a single parking spot on the street. It might help generate about $950 a day in business. Not bad, but what if you replace that one parking spot with a little outdoor dining area, a parklet? That same exact space can suddenly generate over $1,600 a day. You're trading asphalt for actual prosperity.
And here's the crazy part, the engine that drives this whole thing. The data is super clear on this. People who get to shops by walking, biking, or taking transit spend on average 66% more than people who drive there. 66%! So why is that? It all comes back to that linger factor.
Let me paint you a picture. Think about when you drive somewhere, you're trip chaining. You park, you run into the one shop you need, you get back in your car and you're gone. It's a surgical strike. But when you're on foot, you move at a human speed. You stroll, you window shop, you notice that cool little cafe you've never seen before, and you pop in. You make unplanned stops. You become part of the street's ecosystem.
All right, so this all sounds great in theory, right? But it's not just some academic idea from halfway around the world. There's actually a clear, practical blueprint for how we could bring this model to New Zealand and make it a reality in our own cities.
The whole strategy is about creating what are called park once and walk districts. Here's how it works. First, you get rid of those mandatory parking minimums we talked about. Step 2, you start pricing the on-street parking properly, so there's always a spot for someone who just needs to pop in quickly. Third, you consolidate all the long-term parking into shared structures, getting it off the valuable land. And then, the final, most exciting step, you take all that space you just reclaimed and give it back to the people. Wider sidewalks, bike lanes, better public transport.
And really, this brings the whole story together, doesn't it? You can see the entire journey here. We start with the problem, this trap of car dependency fueled by parking minimums. Then you see the potential for a place like Manukau. And finally, you see the solution, a clear roadmap for unlocking all that land and building cities for people again.
So, at the end of the day, what's the big takeaway from all this? The choice we have to make for our cities isn't really about cars versus people. It's much bigger than that. It's a choice between sticking with the stagnation of the past or actively choosing a future of prosperity by designing our cities for what they were always meant for: human beings.